introduction to the remis, and then the second session we discussed individual income tax return e-filing. Third session we discussed partnership tax return filing, and the last session, that means the fourth session, we discussed the corporate income tax return filing. All these three returns are income tax returns. Today we are moving to another tax type. It's value-added tax, or we call VAT, right? So hope Mr. Indika has already conducted the session refers to the value-added tax. So before moving to the return filing, so as usual, let's have a little discussion about this value-added tax, right? So is there anyone who work with this value-added tax? I mean, as an individual, as your own individual VAT return, right? You might have, if you have the taxable activity and the value of that taxable activity more than the threshold, even individual need to register for the VAT. Or if not, maybe for the partnership, maybe for the corporates, right? They also need to register for the VAT, right? Based on the taxable activity and the threshold. Hope some of you may have experience regarding this VAT return, right? So it's a bit complex one. Why I am saying it complex one? With the VAT return, you have to submit several schedules, right? So that is why it's little bit complex scenario, right? The return filing is a bit complex. So what do you know about VAT? If I ask, it's like this. What do you know about VAT? What you can see? What is VAT? If somebody asks, what is VAT? What do you say? Yeah, it's indirect tax one. That's good. Thank you. What else? What does it mean by indirect tax? It's indirect tax. Why we call this value-added tax as an indirect tax?
Ultimately, the consumer is the public has to bear this cost.
Yeah, so the VAT is actually paid by the final consumer, right, or the final customer. What does the VAT registered person do? They collect the VAT from the consumers on behalf of the government, and they remit the difference between the output VAT and input VAT. That difference they remit to the government, right? That means remit to the IRB. So why we call this as an indirect tax? Because the real VAT payer, or the real the person who paid the VAT, right? They pay the VAT through the registered person. They are not paying directly to the government, right? So that is the major difference between the income tax and the value-added tax. So income tax, the particular taxpayer we identify for the purpose of income tax, we identify the person as the taxpayer. Taxpayer directly pay the income tax to the government. But when it comes to the value-added tax, it's not direct, right? So the actual payer, actual consumer, the actual taxpayer is the consumer or the end customer. What does this end customer do? This end customer pay the VAT to the registered person, right? So that is why it's indirect. And it's another thing is it's a consumption-based tax. So far we have discussed the income tax. Those income taxes are income-based taxes. That means the amount of tax payable, the payable tax amount is proportionate to the person's income. But here it is other way around. That means the amount of tax, that means amount of VAT is not proportionate to the income, it proportionate to the consumption. If you consume more, you need to pay more VAT, right? It doesn't matter whether you do have this much of income or this much of income, right? So your income is not considered while you are paying the value-added tax. As a consumer, we all pays VAT, no? So even you earn, say, rupees 100,000 per month, or even you earn rupees 1 million per month, right? It doesn't matter whether you are earning 1 million or 100,000, right? If you consume, say, 80,000, right? The goods or services of rupees 80,000, you have to pay the VAT for that 80,000, right? So there are some disadvantages as well with this VAT, right? In macro level, right? Disadvantages means not from the revenue side, for the consumer, for the customer, right? Consumer, final consumer, the consumers, the buying power is affected by this VAT, right? So that's the nature of VAT. So any idea about VAT rate here in Sri Lanka now? What is the VAT rate?
18%.
18%, right? So on your consumption, right? If it is a taxable supply, that means VAT liable supply of service or good, you have to pay the 18% VAT, right? And what else? VAT threshold. Do you know the VAT threshold now? Say, suppose you are a business organization and you do have a certain amount of revenue, right? So as here, as all of
60
you
million.
see, right? If your annual turnover, right, annual sale or the supply value, annual sale or supply from carrying on or carrying out taxable activity, if it is exceed 60 million per annum or 15 million per quarter, you are liable to register for the value added tax, and accordingly you have to collect the value added tax from your client or customers, and then you have to pay the difference between output VAT and the input VAT to the inland revenue. There are quarter-based returns. Some are liable to submit the return on quarter basis, right? That means for every 3 months they have to submit one particular VAT return. Some other organization, some other registered person, they have to submit the VAT return manual basis, right? So sorry, the monthly basis, right? So at the end of each month, they have to submit the value-added tax returns, right? So what else? And there are some VAT exempted services and goods, right? There are some VAT exempted services and goods, right? If particular service or goods are VAT exempted, right? The supplier or the service provider no need to charge VAT on such supply of service or supply of goods, right? So what do you have? So here if you go through that access, the person who engage with the taxable activity right? They are liable to pay VAT during the, they are liable to pay VAT for the taxable activity carrying in or carrying out, right? So in case of you are carrying in or carrying out taxable activity, right? If threshold exceed 60 million per annum or 15 million per quarter, you need to register for the VAT and you need to pay the VAT. So there are two words, carrying in and carrying out. Make a single කියනවා මේ taxable activity එකක් නැත්නම් බදු අය කළ හැකි යම් ක්‍රියාමාර්ගයක් කිරීමේදී හෝ කරගෙන යාමේදී ඒ ලැබෙන ආදායම නැත්නම් ඒ supply එක බද්දට යටත් වෙනවා. So it explained in English as carrying in or carrying out, right? Taxable activity එකක් carrying in or carrying out නම් එහෙම නැත්නම් taxable activity එකක් කිරීමේදී හෝ කරගෙන යාමේදී ලැබෙන ආදායම නැත්නම් supply value එක VAT එකට යටත් වෙනවා. So what does it what is the difference between carrying in and carrying out? කිරීමේදී හෝ පවත්වාගෙන යාමේදී බදු අය කළ හැකි යම්කිසි activity එකක් කිරීමේදී හෝ කරගෙන යාමේදී, what is the difference? So carrying in means actually it's the main business, kirimedi. So as an example, say manufacturing business, say they are manufacturing some garment items, right, for the local market, right? So it's a carrying in. ඒක තමයි taxable activity එකක් කිරීමේදී ඇතිවන ලාභය. ලාභය නෙමෙයි අතරම turnover එක, right? මේ garment factory එකක් කරනවා. ඒ garment factory මේ garment factory finish කරන garment විකුණලා හම්බෙන supply එක, right? ඒක carrying in, right? What is carrying out? කරගෙන යාමේදී කියන්නේ දැන් ඒක මේ ඒ business එකට incidental මේ income එකක්. උදාහරණයක් විදිහට ගත්තොත් garment factory එකක් කරගෙන යනවා. මේ garment factory කරගෙන යන අය ඒගොල්ලන්ගේ main business එක තමයි මේ finished product, finished garment locally sale කරන එක. හැබැයි ඒ අතරේ අපි හිතමුකෝ මෙහෙම දෙයක් මේගොල්ලන්ගේ මොකක් හරි plant එකක් තිබුණා. මේ garment manufacturing සඳහා මේගොල්ලන් use කරපු plant එකක් නැත්නම් machine එකක් විකුණනවා. That turnover, that income, that supply also liable for that. Why? Act says any taxable activity carrying in or carrying out in Sri Lanka, they are liable for the VAT. මේ බදු අයවන ක්‍රියාමාර්ගයක් නැත්නම් taxable activity එකක් ශ්‍රී ලංකාව තුළ කිරීමේදී හෝ කරගෙන යාමේදී කිරීම කියන්නේ අර garment factory කියන්නේ ඒක තමයි objective main objective එකත් එක්ක කරන business එක සහ කරගෙන යාමේදී වෙන transaction වලට අදාළව ලැබෙන ආදායමත් එතෙන්දී VAT එකට යටත් වෙනවා. මොකද act එක කියන්නේ taxable activity එක කිරීමේදී හෝ කරගෙන යාමේදී ශ්‍රී ලංකාව තුලින් ගත වන ඒ sale value එක තමයි මෙතන පද්දට යටත් වෙන්නේ. Okay. So I hope you all know there's a input output mechanism for this VAT. ඔයගලන් මේ දන්නවා මේ VAT වලට input output mechanism එකක් තියෙනවා. That means the input VAT can claim against the output VAT amount, as we discussed at the beginning, right? There's an input output VAT mechanism, right? In order to mitigate the cascading effect, right? So in order to mitigate the cascading effect, this has been introduced to this VAT system, right? So under this input output mechanism, the input VAT you are that the registered person has paid can be claimed against the output VAT, right? So, but there are some limitation. I hope you know, right? I hope you know those limitations. We'll come to those limitations as well while we progress. We discuss this, right? And but do you heard about this zero rate supply? What is zero rate supply? There's a question. What are the main components which figure out a mismatch in output and input VAT reconciliation in two companies? Yeah, there may be mismatches between the output and input VAT reconciliation, right? So basically, maybe uh, actually, I'm not in the position to say the main component, right? Maybe we'll elaborate this with further discussion, right? I'm not 100% sure what are the main components for the mismatch between the output and input VAT. Maybe the we'll see, right? So I will answer to this, right? So let me check this and answer, right? Okay, yes, export. Exporters, they are liable to pay value-added tax at the rate of 0% because it's a liable to VAT, but the rate is 0. Since the exports are liable to VAT, right? They are eligible to claim the input VAT against the output VAT, right? So in most of the cases, the exporters may have more input than to the output. Therefore, the exporters are entitled to have the VAT refund, right? Even under the SVAT scheme now, from the 1st of October this year, the SVAT scheme has been abolished, right? So, and so now from 1st of October onward, there's no RIP or the RIS, right? So whatever the purchase, if it is not the VAT exempted items, what you have to do, even you are an exporter, right? What you have to do, you have to pay the VAT to the supplier, and then you have to disclose that amount under your inputs, and you may eligible. You will you can request the refund from the IRB. So we come to those points, right? Okay, exports are 0, and other than the export, there are some other categories. That means the supply made to the strategic project and supply made to the uh, supply made to the special project, right? And the supply made to the special project and supply made to the strategic project are zero rated supplies, right? So good and service for foreign companies are zero, yes, right? So hope you have some basic understanding about this VAT, right? So let's move to the I have prepared a very short presentation. Actually, it's not in the PPT format. I do have PPT refers to the VAT, but since the focus is on e-filing, I do not use the PPT, right? Therefore, rather going to the PPT, let me introduce this VAT through some calculations, some examples, right? So we'll share my screen. I'll stop my video and I'm going to share my screen. Okay, now it's so here This is the VAT return. Let me show you the VAT return, right? Right, there are several areas actually, right? So let's say areas, right? This is the area where you need to enter the output VAT, right? So while you are entering the output VAT, right, you have to enter the VAT liable supply, the supply value, as well as the VAT amount, right? Two components. The supply value means the consideration and the VAT, right? So again, this supply, right, has been divided into several categories, right? Let me show you those categorization. The taxable supplies, right? Taxable supplies, that means the amount of sales made to the local customers, right? And the particular item or the service, item or the service is not VAT exempted item or service, right? So such sale value has to be entered here. Then deemed taxable supplies, right? That means the taxable supply needs to the special project, right? And the second one, third one, deemed taxable supply made to the strategic development project. That is what I told you. So these two are also zero rated supplies. Yes, can, right? So I think it's better, much better if you can use the roundup values rather entering the cents, right? So, it has not been uh, prohibited, right? It has not been prohibited, right? So during the return development, I mean within the remis, in the remis during the return development, it is allowed to enter the figures with 2 decimal point, but it's not the hard and fast rule, right? So you can enter the round of figure. That's okay. That's fine, right? Here, this is the part for the supply, right? It has been categorized as the taxable supply, deemed taxable supply, special project, deemed taxable supply, strategic development project, then the wholesale and retail taxable supplies, and then the VAT suspended supplies, right? This is the return before 2025 October. All the return before 2025 October, right? You can have this VAT suspended supply uh, in the return, but after 2024 October, right, it won't be any VAT suspended supplies, right? So, okay. Right. So then the next part for the zero rated supplies. Is there any changes of filing return this quarter? Yeah, this quarter means you are referring, I think, 2025 fourth quarter, no? 2025 October, November, December. Yeah, there will be some changes because no more SWAT, right? From after the period 2025 third quarter, there's no more SWAT. Because of that, there may be some changes in the return. Okay, right here, right? So then the next part to enter the zero rated supplies, exempted supplies and excluded supplies, right? So in case taxpayer do have the zero rated supplies, exempted supplies, or excluded supplies, those details has to enter in this area, right? And thereafter, this kind of supply, there are two special type of supplies, right? One is the local supply of garments by the export companies, and the second one, local supply of fabric, also by the export-oriented companies, right? So instead of tax rate, their output VAT will be calculated by the fixed value, right? For the garment, I think, if I am not wrong, it should be 75 rupees per 1 kilo, and so no, 75 rupees per 1 unit. And if it is for the fabric, I cannot remember exactly, but it is around 75 rupees or somewhere there, 75 rupees for 1 kilo, right? Something like that. So we do have two questions here. So October VAT return, I'm not 100% sure whether it is monthly or quarter basis, right? So, but if you have already submitted the return by monthly basis, right? So I think even after October this year, you have to continue the same. That means you have to submit the return monthly basis. And in case you are submitted the return by quarter basis, right? If so, I hope even after 2025 fourth quarter, you have to submit the return on annual or the quarter basis. So let me check this, right? So I'll check this and inform to you. And the part B is the subcategory of part A output. Yes, you are referring part A and part B. So I think you are referring this part, no? So here there's no part A and part B. Yeah, but this zero rated supplies also comes under the output VAT and the output supplies, right? So the same the output VAT related details, right? So the next part is refers to the input VAT. No. Column A and column B. Right, okay. Column A, I think you are referring this as the column A and this as the column B. Is it so? So what do you mean by column A and column B? Can you just tell me the exact cage number? Let me see. You are referring wholesale and retail supply. No, it's not the subcategory. We can't say it as a subcategory. But in case you do have wholesale and retail taxable supplies, right? So that wholesale and retail taxable supplies you have to disclose under the page number B. Right. Okay, got it. Right. So you are asking the difference between taxable supplies and the wholesale and retail taxable supplies. So the thing is actually the taxable supply, the wholesale and retail is also a kind of taxable supplies. It doesn't no difference. It's a taxable supplies, right? But only difference is this is wholesale and retail supplies applicable for the the wholesale and retailers who has exceed the particular amount of wholesale and retail supplies, right? So they need to disclose their wholesale and retail value under the cage number B, I mean row number B, right? So here the difference is, you know that wholesale and retails. So here what we do is we just tax the value addition. No? So in case of wholesale and retailers, value addition is very minimum, right? So their business nature, their business is somewhat different to the other businesses. Therefore, value addition is some considerable. The comparatively, it's very low, right? So therefore there are some special regulation for the wholesale and retail taxable supplies. So that is why it has been taken out from the normal taxable supply, but it's a part of taxable supply. Let me check whether I do have prepared example. I think I do not have example at the moment. Let me do this wholesale VAT liability, wholesale and retail VAT liability on next week, right? So we'll make some slide for that, and then we can discuss it further, because last week we do not have much to discuss because we just focus on the APIT and WHT return filing, right, through this premise system. Therefore, we do have room to discuss this VAT line. We'll continue that part on next week. Suspended tax. Suspended tax means, yeah, it's wholesale and retail is something like buying and selling. Especially this wholesale and retail supplies are applicable for the famous supermarkets, you know, maybe for the Kiehl's, maybe for the Cargill's, maybe for the Arpico, Spa, right, or the what is the other one, that Glowmark, right? So they are the one who liable for this wholesale and retail debt, right? We'll have more details about wholesale and retail debt on next week. So suspended tax are the SWAT supplies. Now it is not available from 1st of October. It is not available, but before 1st of October, this has been introduced in 2011 or 2015, somewhere there, right? From that date up to the 30th September 2025, we had a suspended supplies. Suspended supplies means SWAT supplies. So those no need to record their sales in, yes, yeah, supermarket and the the wholesale and retailers, not only the supermarket, right? The wholesale and retailers, they are no need to record their supply under the taxable supplies. That means row number A. Instead of row number A, what they have to do is they have to disclose their sales under the row number B, right? That's it. Right, suspended supply. Somebody has asked about suspended supply. Suspended supplies mean the sweat supplies, right? So if you supply to the person who has registered as a RIP, that means registered identified purchaser, right? So if you supply something, some goods or services to the registered identified purchaser, such supply will be treated as not will be. Such supplies were treated as suspended supplies under the SWAT scheme, right? So we move forward, right? So this is not the PPT I plan to discuss with you. Therefore, we move to that one. And prepare some. So let's try to identify what are the type of data that we need to fill for the output VAT related cages, right? So, right. So this is the example, right? So this is the example. So this particular VAT registered person, right? Supply to VAT registered person. That means that means most probably it may be B2B supply. B2B supply value, business to business supply value 12 million. මේ අපි දැන් මෙතන බලන්නේ අර රිටර්න් එකේ අපි මුලින් කතා කරපු ඒ output VAT කියන කොටසට output VAT කියන ඒරියා එකට කොහොමද data අපි ඇතුළත් කරන්නේ මොනවද ඇතුළත් කරන්න ඕන data අපි අපේ ඊළඟ session මේ session එකේ second part එකේදී අපි කතා කරමු කොහොමද data ඇතුළත් කරන්න කියන එක අපි දැන් බලන්නේ මම හිතන්නේ මේ අවබෝධය ඔයගලන්ට තියෙනවා හැබැයි මේක refresh කිරීමක් තමයි මම මේ කරන්නේ අපි බලන්නේ output tax නැත්නම් output VAT කියන කොටසට අදාළව මොනවද ඇතුළත් කළ යුතු data right the B2B supply that means supply made to VAT registered person right and B to non-VAT registered person supply made to the non-VAT registered person right so you know business organizations they have to supply the services so they have to supply the goods to the VAT registered persons as well as to the non-VAT registered person as an example when we myself or most of yourselves right when we purchase something from the VAT registered person right so we are not the VAT registered persons no? So in that case what they have to do is they have to issue the VAT inclusive invoice to us අපි VAT registered person කෙනෙක් නෙවෙයි නම් එයා අපේ theory එකේ විදිහට අපිට VAT inclusive invoice එකක් තමයි issue කරන්න ඕනේ. ඒ කියන්නේ ඇත්තටම ගත්තොත් එහෙම මේ consideration එක දාපු invoice එක. හැබැයි ඒක විහිම වෙන්නේ නැහැ. In practice what they do they issue the invoice with the consideration plus VAT right අපේ consideration එකයි VAT උයි දෙකම දාපු එකක් තමයි ගොඩක් වෙලාවට issue කරන්නේ. හැබැයි non-VAT registered VAT registered නැති person කෙනෙකුට inclusive invoice එකක් දෙන්න පුළුවන්. right ඒකේ අර tax invoice කියලා ගහන්න අවශ්‍ය වෙන්නේ නැහැ. ඒ වගේම මේ purchaser ගේ නම ඕනි වෙන්නේ නැහැ. හැබැයි මෙන්න මේ supply to VAT registered person කියන category එකේ ඒ invoice එකේ තියෙන්න ඕනි කාටද supply කළේ supply කරපු එක්කෙනාගේ කියන්නේ මේ purchaser ගේ TIN number එක මොකක්ද සහ මේකේ tax invoice එකක් කියලා ගහලා දෙන්න ඕනේ ඔන්න කියන කාරණා ටිකක් තියෙනවා. So anyhow now this example this VAT registered person do have supplies to the VAT registered persons as well as non-VAT persons. That means මේ VAT සඳහා ලියාපදිංචි නොවුණු සහ උණු කියන දෙකොල්ලන්ට මෙයා supply කරලා තියෙනවා. So once we go further, it says this company do have the export of garment as well. Export of garment this much, and exempted and excluded supplies as well, right? They do have exempted and excluded supplies, and not only that, they do have suspended supplies. ඒ කියන්නේ අර RIP ලට කොල්ලා තියෙන supply එකකුත් තියෙනවා. දැන් හැම ජාතියකම supplies මෙතන තියෙනවා. right? අපි මුලින්ම බලමු මේ ටික කොහෙටද යන්න ඕනි කියලා return එක. Excluded and exempted. Exempted items are categorized under the schedule, second part of the first schedule. මේක දැන් ඇත්තටම දැන් exempted excluded කියලා ගොඩක් වෙලාට දෙකක් හොයන්න හම්බෙන්නේ නැහැ. But at the beginning of this value added tax, some items are excluded from the VAT. කියන්නේ ඉවත් කරන ලද සහ නිදහස් කරන ලද ඉවත් කරපුවා තිබ්බා exclude කරපුවා some supplies and some goods and some services are excluded from the VAT scope and during the early stage of this VAT, right? So now I think I'm not 100% sure what are the excluded items, but there are exempted items. Exempted items are listed under the part 2 of the first schedule. VAT Act එකේ first schedule එකේ part 2 වල තමයි මේ exempted items list කරලා තියෙන්නේ. මට මතක විදිහට I'm not 100% sure, but during the 2007, 8, 9, right on that period, some tea supplies are excluded from the VAT scope, but now tea is not even the exempted item, right? From 2024 January 1st onward, the supply of tea to the local market, it's become a liable supplies, right? Okay, right. So අපි මෙතන දැන් මේ output VAT එකට අදාළ detail ටික අපිට තියෙනවා. So අපි මේ output VAT එකට අදාළ detail ටික අපි enter කරන්න ඕනි මෙන්න මේ area එකට. අපි ආයෙත් අර return එක වැළුවොත් මෙන්න මේ area එකට. taxable supply එක කීයද? deemed taxable මෙතන strategic project සහ special project වලට අදාළ details නැහැ. wholesale නැහැ. suspended supplies තියෙනවා. මේකේ තියෙන මෙන්න මේ දෙකම මේ දෙකම යන්නේ taxable supplies. මේ supply to the VAT registered person and supply to non VAT person කියන දෙකම යන්නේ taxable supply. මේ ඉතින්දි වෙනසක් නැහැ, return එකේදී වෙනසක් නැහැ. return එකේදී දෙකම යන්නේ taxable supply කියන තැනට. export of garment තියෙනවා, exempted and excluded තියෙනවා, suspended තියෙනවා. අපි මෙතන strategic development project වලට දුන්නු ඒවා, ඒ වගේම special project වලට දුන්නු ඒවා නැහැ. So let me show you. මෙන්න මේ කොටස් වලට තමයි යන්නේ. අපි බලමු ඉස්සරහට ඔක යන විදිය. right? මේකේ zero rated supply කියන්නේ export තියෙනවා. exempted and excluded. Exempted and excluded කියන දෙකම category දෙකෙන් තියෙනවා. අපි මෙතන exempted supplies තියෙනවා මේ උදාහරණ. අපි බලමු. මෙහෙම මෙතන ඇත්තටම මම කලින් කිව්ව taxable supply wholesale and retail supply එක taxable supply එකක්ම තමයි. හැබැයි එතන අර rate එක apply කරද්දී සමහර වෙලාවට මේ එතන rate එක apply කරද්දී පොඩි පොඩි differences තියෙනවා. දැන් උදාහරණයක් විදිහට ගත්තොත් එහෙම wholesale and retail මේ supermarket එකක් ඇතුලේ විකුණනවා tax liable items විකුණනවා, tax liable non items විකුණනවා. උදාහරණයකට ගත්තොත් හාල් විකුණනවා. හාල් ඇවිල්ලා VAT වලට යටත් නැහැ. ඒ කියන්නේ VAT වලින් exempt කරපු item එකක්. ඊළඟට මේ සුපර් මාකට් එකක් ඇතුලේ එළවලු විකුණනවා. එළවලු සහ පළතුරු මේ එළවලු සහ පළතුරු imported ඒවා ඇරෙන්න මේ locally produced කරන එළවලු සහ පළතුරු VAT වලට liable නෑ. ඒක exempted item එක. ඒ නිසා මේ ඔය wholesale and retail වලට මේ බැහැ අර සාමාන්‍ය විදිහට taxable සම්පූර්ණ turnover එකම taxable supply කියලා දාන්න. ඒවට කියනවා මට මතක නැහැ දැන් අත්‍තරම කලින් කිව්වොත්දී 3/4 එයාගේ total එකෙන් 3/4 අපි මේ assume කරනවා 3/4 තියන්නේ taxable tax එකට යටත් item තමයි යා sale කරන්නේ. ඒ කියන්නේ හාල් level පළතුරු වැරෙන්න අනිත් ඒවා තමයි දැන් fresh මාළු ගත්තත් ඒක VAT එකට යටත් වෙනවා. එතකොට ඒ හින්දා 4න් එකක් 125ක් අතහැරලා 75ක් යටත් කළා. ඒ වෙනස කරන්න තමයි මෙතන මේ wholesale and retail වලට වෙනම cage එකක් තියෙන්නේ. ඒව නැතුව ඇත්තටම wholesale and retail supply එක taxable activity එකක් තමයි.
එතකොට දැන් මේ taxable supply එක අපි හිතමුකෝ 1 million තිබුණා කියලා. එතකොට wholesale and retail supply එකත් 1 million කියන්නේ මම අහන්නේ මේ අර මේ taxable supply එකේ කොටසක්ද wholesale and retail කියන්නේ එහෙම නැත්නම් taxable supply එකයි
වෙනම දැන් කවුරුහරි දැන් මේ අහන ප්‍රශ්නේදී එයාට taxable supplies 1 million තිබ්බා wholesale and retail supplies 1 million තිබුණා. මේ දෙක 1 million දෙකක් විදිහට අර cages දෙකේ එනවා.
එතකොට සර් දැන් එතකොට අපි total supply එක 2 million නේ සර්.
total supply එක 2 million.
2 million. right. එතකොට දැන් අපි wholesale and retail නැති taxable supply එක තමයි උඩින් දාන්නේ taxable මේ supply එකක් විදිහට
taxable supply. wholesale and retail supply කියන එක එන්නේ අර වගේ supermarket වගේ තියෙන හැට විතරයි. අනිත් අයට ඕක අදාළ නැහැ.
right. එතකොට අපි සාමාන්‍ය wholesale and retail දෙනවට අදාළ tax එකට තිබුණොත් තමයි taxable supply එකේ දාන්නේ සර්. එතකොට අනිත් ඒවා උඩ දාන්න පුළුවන් නේ සර්.
taxable supply. දැන් manufacturing organization එකක් wholesale විකුණන්නේ අතර උදාහරණයකට දැන් හිතන්නකෝ මොන හරි item එකක් අපි හිතමුකෝ මොනවාද සබන් manufacture කරනවා. එයා wholesale තමයි ඊළඟට එයාගේ supply එක තියෙන්නේ wholesale. නැතු එයා මේ පොඩ විකුණන්නේ නැහැ නේ. එයා supply කරන්නේ wholesale. හැබැයි ඒ වුණාට එයා අර wholesale and retail කියන තැනින් නෙමෙයි supply එක declare කරන්න ඕනේ. එයා taxable activity එක taxable supply කියන තැනින් wholesale and retail කියන කයි තියෙන්නේ අර supermarket වලට විතරයි. supermarket සහ ඔය කියන amount එක exit කරලා තියෙන hardware එකක් තියෙනවා නම් ඉතින් hardware chain එකක් තියෙනවා නම් ඒවටත් අදාළ වෙන්න පුළුවන්.
ඔව්. ඊට පස්සේ දැන් දැන් supermarket වල දැන් වෙනත් මොකුත් taxable supply නැත්තම් wholesale and retail supply එකක් විතරක් තිබුණේ. එතකොට උඩට taxable supply එකකින් මොකුත් එන්නේ නැහැ. wholesale and retail එකට amount එක දාගන්න continue කරන්න පුළුවන් නේ return එක.
ඔව් පුළුවන්. එයා ගන්න. ඒක නැත්තම් ඉතින් දාන්න පුළුවන්. මට මෙතන මේ දැන් no limit වගේ වට මේක හරියට මට ෂුවර් නෑ මට හරියට ෂුවර් කියලා කියන්න no limit වල total supply කියන්නේ wholesale and retail වලින් කියලා අපි චුට්ටක් බලමු. ඒක මම ඒ වුණාට දැන් කොමන් යහන්නේ අතරම මේ retail මේ textile wholesale retail කරන අයට කොහොමද මේකේ application එක කියලා. හැබැයි ඔතන textile wholesale retail කරන අයට වඩා කරන සුපර්මාර්කට්ම තමයි උතන ටාගට් උනේ. මම ඕක පොඩ්ඩක් බලලා මම ඕකට clarification එකක් දෙන්නම් next week. Right, then the next part, the part 3, to enter the input tax, right? As we discussed earlier, under this VAT scheme, input can claim against the output tax, right? If you are a VAT registered person, right, what you have to do, you have to record the output VAT and you have to record the input VAT. The balance between the difference between the input and output you have to pay to the IRB, right? මෙන්න මේකේ input මොනවද කියලා identify කරගන්න එකටත් මේ example එකේ තියෙනවා. So let me show you against this taxpayer, right? The import garment fabric. Now fabric import කරලා තියෙනවා 24 million and local purchase, this is the amount of VAT that person has paid during this business, right? So VAT paid on accessories for manufacture of liable supplies. Make a practical scenario. In practice, the businesses are very complex, very complicated. the same business may have tax liable supply as well as the tax exempted supplies. So this is hypothetical situation. I have incorporated some of these scenarios here and just formulate this particular case, right? So only for the study purpose, right here, this according to the data here, this particular taxpayer, right? The taxpayer do have liable sales and export sales. Export also part of the liable, right? But the rate is 0, and this person do have exempted supplies as well. So when we comes to the input, right, he has to pay that for the standard supplies, that means taxable supplies. He has to pay the VAT against the export sales, and he has to pay the VAT against the exempted supplies as well. Educational services VAT එකෙන් exempt කරලා තියෙනවා. එතකොට educational services දෙනකොට මෙයා local market එකකින් ගත්ත item හරි නැත්නම් local market එකකින් consume කරපුවට හරි මෙයා VAT එකක් ගෙවනවා. ඒතකොට exempt ඒවට against මෙයා VAT එකක් ගෙවනවා. input VAT එකක් තියෙනවා. අපි දැන් බලමු ඒව කොහොමද ඉඩ දෙන්නේ කියලා ඉස්සරහට කතා කරමු. මම මේ ඒකේ තියෙන varieties නැත්නම් scenarios ටික තමයි මෙතන පෙන්නලා තියෙන්නේ. Right? The person might have direct import, and for the import he may pay the tax at the point of custom, right? And once we consider the local purchase, right? Some local purchase may use for the exempted supplies. Some local purchase items or service may use only and exclusively for the taxable supplies. මෙන්න මේ වගේ variation ගොඩක් තියෙන්න පුළුවන්. එතකොට මෙතන මේ ඔක්කොම variation වලින් finally what we expect, right? We do not allow the input against the exempted supplies, but we allow the input against the taxable supplies as well as the zero rated supplies. මෙන්න මේක තමයි වැදගත්. Zero rated supplies වලට අපි අතරම input එක ඉඩ දෙනවා. ඒ වගේම liable supplies වලට 18% liable supplies වලට අදාළ input එක අපි ඉඩ දෙනවා. හැබැයි exempted මේ tax එකෙන් exempt කරලා තියෙන item එකක් නැත්නම් service එකක් අදාළව ගෙවපු input එක තියෙනවා නම් ඒ input එක අපි අර liable output එකෙන් අඩු කරන්න දෙන්නේ නැහැ. Right? So ඒ අදහස එක්ක අපි ඉස්සරහට යමු. So this person do have local purchase, right? That paid on accessories for manufacturing, liable business this much. That paid on transport charges this much. So now this person do have export exempted supplies as well as the liable supplies, right? So out of the expenses, some expenses may directly for the liable supply. Some expenses may directly for the exempted supplies. What we have to do, we have to disallow the input, right, proportionate to the exempted supplies, right? අපි input එක හැමතිස්සෙම අපි බලනවා මේ input එක exempted supplies වලට අදාළව ආපු input එකක්ද කියලා. එහෙම ආව input එකක් තියෙනවා නම් අපි ඒක මේ calculation එකේදී අයින් කරනවා. හැබැයි අපි මෙතෙන්දී record කර ගන්නවා. That is why it is here, right? So now this is the calculation, right? Here it is the calculation. Just the information. So this is the calculation, right? So supply to the VAT registered person this much, supply to non-VAT person. So VAT inclusive price 8.2 කියන්නේ. So from that amount we just calculate the consideration, and once we apply the 18% margin on this consideration, this is the total output VAT against the taxable supplies. Right here, the total output VAT is this much. This total output VAT against the this total output VAT against the taxable activities, right? මේ පුද්ගලයා කරපු taxable activities වලට අදාළව තියෙන output VAT එක තමයි අපි මේ calculate කරලා තියෙන්නේ. right? So SWAT supplies ගත්තාම ඒකත් 18% යටත් වෙනවා. හැබැයි මෙතෙන්දී මෙයාට cash වෙනුවට මෙයා RIP කෙනෙකුට නම් මේක supply කරලා තියෙන්නේ. cash වෙනුවට RIP මෙයාට credit voucher එකක් දීලා තියෙනවා වෙන්න පුළුවන්. right? So this is the total taxable supply. Total taxable supply 44 million. So let me show this 44 million. It's included this 12 million, 7 million, 19 million, 15 million and 10 million, right? So this is the taxable supply and this is the exempted supply. This person do have exempted supply as well. So the total supply is this much, 54 million, and this is the output VAT against this taxable supply. So this is the input calculation, right? So input, we know that imported fabric used for the core business, right? And then VAT paid on accessories, transport, the common expenses, right? The VAT paid on common expenses. What we have to do, we have to allow on proportionate basis, right? Then common expenses නැත්නම් common expenses වලට අදාළව ගෙවපු VAT එක අපි ඒ කියන්නේ මේක attribute වෙනවා නම් මේ exempted supplies වලට ඒකට අදාළව කොටසක් අපි disallow කරන්න ඕනේ. right? මම කියනවා සමහර විට මේ වෙලාවේ තේරෙන්නේ නැති වෙයි. අපි return එක file කරන විදිහත් එක්ක බලමු. එතකොට මේක ඊට වඩා තව පොඩ්ඩක් clear වෙයි. right? ඊට පස්සේ මේ තියෙන්නේ මේක මම ඇත්තටම ලොකුවට කතා කරන්නේ නැහැ. මොකද ඔයගලන්ට මිස් ඉන්දික මේක කරලා ඇති. This is the mechanism for calculation of refund amount or the brought forward amount, right? එතකොට එතන කියනවා export sales වලට සහ export sales වලට සහ SWAT sales වලට අදාළව 100% input එක allow කරනවා. හැබැයි අනිත් category වලට අදාළව input එක allow කරන්නේ ඒ අදාළ කැටගරියේ ඉන්කම් එකට ප්‍රොපෝෂනේට් වෙන විදියට. එතනින් එහාට කාට හරි excess input එකක් තිබ්බා නම් ඒ excess input එක ඊළඟ අවුරුද්දට brought forward වෙනවා. right? No, you have to enter those details invoice wise, right? So invoice serial order, you have to maintain the invoice serial order. So here we have calculated, right? So this is the total input, right? Out of those total input, part of the input has been disallowed, right? Part of the input has been disallowed. That is because certain expenses cannot be claimed as a input VAT, especially with common expenses වල තියෙන මේ tax exempted කොටසට අදාළ expenditure එක අපි හොයාගෙන proportionately ඒ ප්‍රමාණය disallow කරනවා. right? So ඒ විදිහට calculate කරාම allowable input එක මේ ගානේ ඇවිල්ලා තියෙනවා 6,872,722. 22 it should be 722, right? ඊට පස්සේ ඒක මෙන්න මේකෙන් අපි මුලින්ම මෙයාගේ output VAT එකට against output VAT එක මෙන්න මෙතන තියෙනවා, right? output VAT එකට against තියෙන amount එක අපි කොහොමද use කරනවා. ඒ වගේම මෙතෙන්දී අපි බලනවා කොච්චරක් proportionately කොච්චරක්ද export sale එක. export sale එකට සහ suspended sales එකට proportionately කොටසක් refund කරන්න අවස්ථාව හම්බ වෙනවා. හැබැයි එතනින් එහා තියෙන ඒවා ඒ refund කිරීමේ අවස්ථාව හම්බෙන්නේ ඒවා මෙතන credit එක විදිහට disclose කරලා ඉතුරු වෙන ප්‍රමාණයක් තියෙනවා නම් ඒ ඉතුරු වෙන ප්‍රමාණය ඊළඟ මේ quarter එකට හරි නැත්නම් ඊළඟ month එකට හරි use කරන්න ගන්න පුළුවන්. right? So before we move into the video, refers to the return filing, right? Let's have a 2 minutes, 2 or 3 minutes water break. According to my time now, it's 9:41. We'll be back before 9:45. Is it okay? So then we can continue this session until 10:40. No, is it okay? Okay, let's have 2 3 minutes water break. We'll be back around 9:45. Thank you. Yes, yeah, I'm back for this question. Does the IRD cross-check whether the output of one company matches the input of another company? Yes, IRD do that kind of check, right? Earlier, it was 100%. I mean, at the beginning and at the early stage of this matching, according to my understanding, now it's not the 100% match, but still IRD match the output schedules with the inputs. Right, so what else? So, and then the SWAT registration and kind of thing, but now this is not that much important because SWAT is already abolished, right? So under the SWAT, there are two RIP, registered identified purchaser, and the RIS, registered identified supplier, right? So now anyway, we'll share this document with you all, right? And you may refer this data if necessary, right? So now let me open the e-filing videos, right? Hope you can see my screen. If there's any issue with my voice or with this visuals, please let me know, right? So here, so now I'm just logging to fill the value-added tax return, right? So other important thing is, as we discussed at the beginning, that return has to be filed by the corporates, most probably, and the partnership, right, as well as the individual, right? The proprietorship business, the turnover exceed the 60 million threshold, even it is a proprietorship business, right? It has to register for the VAT and it has to issue the VAT invoice, and finally, that proprietorship business has to pay the VAT to the government, right? So because of this, right? So even the individual can access to the value-added tax return if it is a proprietorship business, and if it is not the individual, right? If it is a corporate or the partnership, right? What they have to do is they have to use the SSID, right? They have to use the SSID for the logging, right? So let me show you again. It's from the beginning. So this is proprietorship business. Since this is a proprietorship business, the proprietor can fill the data to the return. That is why here we use the PIN instead of SSID. We have entered the proprietor's detail, right? So now we are in the proprietor's dashboard. You can see he has registered for the several tax types. So generally we registered for the individual income tax type, but here this person has registered for the multiple tax types. This is the dashboard, and here once you move to the return schedule management, there will be a drop down. So this drop down you can see, right? So in addition to the individual income tax SWAT, so individual income tax and set details, here you can see simplified value added SWAT and the value added tax SWAT as well, right? So we'll see the rest. So we select the simplified VAT. Right? So here we select the return. So again, I have to say this is testing data. That is why only one return is here, right? But if it is a real data, right? If this is a real data, there will be several tax returns, right? Once you log into the system and once you select the income tax type, right? Then after that, there will be several there will be several returns, right? But here you cannot see any other return instead of this particular one because this is just a testing environment, right? Okay, so then what you have to do, just forget about this rest, the resting environment or something like that, right? So focus from the return schedule management return filing summary page, right? So so now only one this one is available. So we have to say yes, this one we need to fill, and we mark the, the code, and we mark for the tax period code, and then we can open the return, right? So we'll see the rest. We first remove the draft, right? Now the return status is new, right? Even you also can remove the draft at any time you need before submission, right? So now move forward from that point, right? Here you can see this is the actually the kind of qualifying page of the value added tax return. අර අපි ඔයාලට මතක ඇති අපි corporate income tax return එකට එද්දිත් ඒ වගේම simplified VAT return එක select කරන ගන්න වෙලාවෙදිත් අපි මේ decision එකක් ගැනීම දුන්නා හැමතිස්සෙම taxpayer, right? Taxpayer has to decide up to what extent you need for that purpose, right? Here also same, the taxpayer can decide මොනවද අපිට අවශ්‍ය කරන schedules. මේක ඇත්තටම ගත්තොත් schedules සහ calculation ගොඩක් තියෙන return එකක්. එතකොට මෙතෙන්දී taxpayer පුළුවන් තීරණය කරන්න මොකක් හරි කොටසක් මේ වාර්තාවට අදාළද නැද්ද කියන කාරණාව, right? So this is very important, right? If you do not select the proper items, right, then your return will be a bit complex, right? එයින්දා මෙතනදී මෙන්න මේ අවබෝධයක් ඇතුව මේ qualifying condition යටතේ මොනවටද data enter කරන්න බලාපොරොත්තු වෙන්නේ සහ අනිත් අදාළ පාර්ශ්ව වලින් මොන data මේ පද්ධතියට හම්බෙයිද කියන එක දන්නේ නැති හින්දා මේ සමහර වැඩිපුර විස්තර මෙතෙන්දී අපිට ඇතුළත් කළ යුතු වෙනවා. ඒ අනුව අපිට පුළුවන් යම් තාක් දුරකට මේ return එක customize කරගන්න. Right? So it's asked whether you have output tax schedule and whether it is applicable. Then it asks, is input tax schedule, that means the local tax purchase schedules, whether it is applicable or not, right? Input tax schedules import applicable or not, right? Credit note applicable or not, right? So likewise there are few statements, right? So based on those statements you have to decide what schedules that I need to fill and what schedules that I no need to fill, right? So මේ අවබෝධයත් එක්ක තමයි ඉස්සරහට යන්න ඕනේ. මේ qualifying page එකේදී අපි අර individual income tax returns වල කළා වගේ එහෙම නැත්නම් corporate income tax returns වල කළා වගේ අපි ඒ අවශ්‍ය ප්‍රමාණයට පමණක් මේක focus එක තියාගන්න එක වැදගත් වෙනවා. මෙන්න මේ yes or no කියන option පාවිච්චි කළා. right? And further, there are info button, lot of info buttons, right? If you cannot remember the background details, refers to those parts, right? So the background information you can read if you mark the cursor on the top of these icons, right? මේ cursor එක අරන් ගිහිල්ලා මෙන්න මේ කියන icon එකක් උඩ තිබ්බාම මේ icon එකට අදාළ තොරතුරු display කරනවා. right? yes no කියන්න පුළුවන් තමන්ට තියෙන data වර්ගය සහ තමන්ගේ ව්‍යාපාරයේ ස්වභාවය අනුව yes no කියන option එක පාවිච්චි කරලා අපිට පුළුවන් යම් කිසි දුරකට මේ return එක කළමනාකරණය කරන්න. We can manage this return via this option. Then you have to say next. So this is the return, right? This is the area where you need to enter the supply details and the input. That means basically your purchase details. Now you can see there are taxable supplies, deemed taxable supplies, the everything in the paper format available here, right? paper format එකේ තිබ්බ සේරම දේවල් මේක incorporate කරලා තියෙනවා. right? So the data entering process is not much complicated, right? So data you have to directly enter to those cages, right? So මේ සුදු පාටෙන් තියෙන cages හැමතිස්සෙම make sure if the cage is white in color, that means මේ cage එක editable, right? Taxpayer can enter those details, right? මෙතන taxable supplies වල විතරක් ගානක් දාලා යන්න පුළුවන්. I just put 10, right? So I just click the next. See, there's no input tax, right? So if so, we have to say no. මේ තියෙන එක ඊළඟ පාර්ට් එක අර brought forward VAT එක සහ brought forward නොවි ඉස්සරහට යන නැත්නම් අපිට ඉස්සරහට යන කෙනගේ මීන්ටලි රිෆන්ඩ් එකක් හම්බෙන සප්ලයි එක මොනවද කියන එක. right? අපි දැන් return එක ඇතුලේ ඉන්නේ. Again you can check your thing and your name and the period code, right? So right, so අපි මෙතන අපි කලින් හදාගත්ත details ටික තමයි අපි දැන් enter කරන්න යන්න try කරන්නේ, right? Taxable supply එක අපි ගත්තේ මෙතන තියෙනවා all together 1.19 million, right? Altogether here we do have 19 million. So 19 million here. So let me enter 19 million. Once we enter the 19 million, you can see there's no much of pre-population, right? So whatever the data you have to enter, right? So first we enter the taxable supply, value of supply, 19 million, and the VAT amount on these supplies. And deemed taxable supplies, special project, no deemed taxable supplies. මේක අනිත් එක මේක ages වලට දැන් data නැත්තම් enter නොකර ඉන්න පුළුවන්. It doesn't matter. System will calculate the totals, but nothing else, right? So as a taxpayer, as a registered person, you have to enter the supply value turnover from this categorization, and not only the consideration, you have to enter the relevant VAT portion as well. Right page දිරම අපි input එකට related details උත් මේකට enter කරගන්න ඕනේ. So far we have entered the output tax related details. So you can see now the total output tax as per our Excel calculation, total output tax 3,420,000. Here it is same, right? So now we are entering the other details. Zero rated supplies, 15 million we have entered, right? But no VAT liability against this zero rated supply because the rate is zero. It's a liable supply, but the rate is zero. Non-VAT purchase gauge. Non-VAT purchase gauge, if you are referring the input here, right? So according to the law, right? So input you have to claim within, I think earlier it was 1 year or now 6 months, right? Anyhow, input has to be claimed within that period of within that period, right? if you submit the return or if you submit the schedules after the given period, right? You may lose the input tax, right? Here also, if you miss to fill non-VAT purchase cage, you can amend, right? You can amend the total amount of purchase per one record. Record දෙයක් විදිහට ඒක enter කරන්න පුළුවන්.
So we should, I mean, about the file another return. No, we can. I mean, so I think we can't. I mean, the submitted return, right?
Sorry, you can't amend.
I mean, submitted return. No, then how do we do the
No,
amendments?
submitted return you cannot amend if just the schedule, right? If just the schedule, what you can do is you can amend the schedule, but if that change make some, if it is make some changes to the return, in that case, what we have to do is we have to submit the amended return, but the amended return you cannot submit through this premise. So what you have to do is you have to enter the data to the download printout of the VAT return, and you have to submit that one as the request for the return amendment. Correct?
Got it. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay. So we'll move forward, right? So we are in the process of entering data still to the output area, right? So suspended supplies also entered, and the zero rated supplies also entered. So here you can see the extra details, right? And then you have to enter the exempted supplies. If available, you can enter the excluded supplies as well, but it's very rare to have excluded supplies now. And in case the company do have supply of local garment or supply of fabric, local supply of fabric, it will be liable for the value-added tax, right? If no details here in this, if there's no details, what you can do is you can keep those cages as blank, right? So no need to enter whatever the details to each and every basket, right, or each and every cage, right? If particular cage is not if you do not have anything to enter under the particular cage, you can just ignore it. Then the input details, right? Import value and the amount of VAT paid at the point of custom. So this is how we entering the import related details, right? The local purchase. Right, so we have entered the import details, and likewise we can enter the local purchase related details as well. if a company has only customer not registered for it, then preparing schedule 1 output. One line item. Why do you say one line item? You mean, but I think it can't be like that. If a company has only customer not registered for that, when preparing the schedule 1, they will have to make one line in the Excel template. මොකද එතන ඒ purchaser ගේ TIN number එකක් වගේ detail යන්නේ නැහැ. ඒ නිසා මේක one time sale එකක් වෙන්නත් බැරි කමක් නැහැ. No, here what you have to do is you have to just to disclose the VAT purchase. So once we complete that part, that means once we enter the output details and input details, right? So then we have to calculate the amount of allowed input tax, right? So there are two ways. One way, we have to do that calculation by ourselves. If not, the second way, what we can do is we can ask the system to do that refund or the brought forward input VAT amount calculation, right? So we do have a question. VAT registered person කෙනෙක්ගෙන් නොවන කෙනෙක්ගෙන් ගත්තා මම දැන් how to record return and schedule to purchasing from non-VAT registered person whether to record bulk or invoice wise. If it is a purchase from non-VAT registered person, you cannot claim the input because there's no input actually, right? So if it is purchasing, you do not have any input on this. Since you do not have the input, right, in this scenario, someone can argue that yes, it is okay to enter the bulk data rather invoice wise details, right? So I think administratively it's much better to submit the details, the item wise detail, right? So in that case, what we have to do is we have to use the laptop. You have to use the Excel or that kind of mechanism to record those transactions. Otherwise, it will be really bad experience at the end of this quarter or end of this period to calculate or to manage that details, right? ඒ නිසා මෙතන ඇත්තටම බල්ක් එක දෙන්න පුළුවන්. නමුත් ඇත්තටම ඇඩ්මිනිස්ට්‍රේටිව් පර්පස් එතන වැඩියෙන් හොඳ වෙන්නේ බල්ක් එක නැතුව transaction by transaction දෙන එක. ඊට පස්සේ මම අර කියපු ඔප්ෂන් එක මෙතන අපිට මෙන්න මේ විතර කැල්කියුලේට් කරන්නේ total allowable input එකෙන් export සහ suspended supplies වලට අදාළව කොච්චර ප්‍රමාණයක් allow කරනවාද ඒ කියන්නේ proportionately කොච්චර total supply එකකින් කොච්චර ප්‍රමාණයක්ද export sale එකක් තියන්නේ ඒ export sale එකට against input එක කිසිම ප්‍රශ්නයක් නැතුව සම්පූර්ණයෙන්ම ඒකට against මේ ඉඩ දෙනවා. එතකොට ඒක තමයි මේ 11ට කැල්කියුලේට් වෙලා යන්නේ. මේ 11 අපි කැල්කියුලේට් කරලා දානවද නැත්නම් සිස්ටම් එකට කැල්කියුලේට් කරන්න දෙනවද කියන එක මෙන්න මේ qualifying page එකේ තියෙනවා. So let me show it again here. So it asks, do you need right here page 11, this is the formula to calculate the input VAT for the KH11, right? ඔය පුළුවන් මේක uneditable කරලා system එකට කියන්න මේක calculate කරන්න කියලා. Here you can read, do you need to edit KH100 and KH11? We say no, no need to change by ourselves. Then what does the system do? System itself calculate the amount here. You can see අපි කලින් මේක දුන්නේ මේ 11 දී modification එකක් නැත්නම් මේ අපිට edit කරන්න අවශ්‍යයි කියලා අපිට edit කරන්න අවශ්‍යයි කියලා තිබ්බාම මෙතන figure එකක් දෙන්නේ නැහැ. හැබැයි අපි කිව්වොත් මෙතන system එකට calculate කරන්න කියලා system එක මේ amount එක calculate කරනවා.
Excuse me sir.
Yeah.
So අපි last quarter එකේ overpayment එක කරලා තිබුණොත් අපිට ඒක දැන් මේ return එකට ගන්න පුළුවන් gross ඒ කියන්නේ refund එකක් විදිහට එහෙම නැත්නම් brought forward input tax එකක් විදිහට ගන්න පුළුවන් කොහොමද?
මේමයි. එතකොට ඒක ඉන්පුට් යටතට වැටෙන්නේ නැහැ. දැන් අපි මෙතනින් කරන්නේ අතරම ඉන්පුට් කොච්චරක් allow කරනවද කියන එක කැල්කියුලේට් කරන එක. ඒ last quarter එකේ කරපු excess payment එක මේ ඉන්පුට් යටතේ නෙමෙයි ඒකට ඉඩ හම්බෙන්නේ. මේ කියන්නේ මෙන්න මේ කියන කොටස නැත්නම් 11 12 13ට වෙනකන් කැල්කියුලේට් කරද්දී ඒ last quarter ගෙවපු excess එක අදාළ වෙන්නේ නැහැ. ඒ last quarter excess එක මේ අපිට හම්බෙන්නේ මේ ඊළඟ කොටසෙන් කියන්නේ tax payable එක calculate කරන වෙලාවේදී tax credit එකක් විදිහට ඒක use කරන්න පුළුවන්. but ඒක මේ input එකක් වෙන්නේ නැහැ.
right. Thank you.
okay. මම මේ recheck කරන්නේ අපි cal කරාමත් එන amount එකමද මේ එන්නේ කියන එක ඇත්තටම there's no any difference, right? So even we calculate those figures by ourselves, the figures are identical, right? right අපිට එතන alter කරන්න පුළුවන්. So that option with the tax payer or the tax registered person, he can decide whether the KH level calculated by the system or KH level calculated by the officer manually. The KH level calculated by the taxpayer manually, right? මේ මම මේ හැමදෙස්සම කැල් කරලා බලන්නේ සිස්ටම් කැල් කරපු වැලියු එක අපිට කැල් කරන්න තිබ්බ වැලියු එකත් එක්ක කොච්චර ඩීවියේට් වෙනවද කියලා. There's no any deviation actually, right? So you can use the auto calculation method. I think it's exactly correct and exactly match with the manual calculation. එතකොට දැන් මෙතන ඇත්තටම 6 million amount එකක් input තිබ්බා. ඒ 6 million වලින් 3.9 million already මේ direct හම්බෙනවා සහ ඉතුරු කොටස liability එකට set off වුණාට පස්සේ තවත් ඉතුරු කොටසක් තියෙනවා නම් ඒ liability එකට set off වුණාට පස්සේ තියෙන තවත් ඉතුරු කොටස ඊළඟට brought forward වෙනවා. Now you can see part of the return has been completed, right? The total input tax 6,872,000, right? So now the total input is higher than the tax payable amount, right? Therefore, there will be a gross refund. Right? So these are the area where you have to disclose the VAT suspended purchase if you do have RIP status, registered identified purchaser status, right? So the excess payment you have to claim under the section of tax credit, right? If you do have excess pay amount, you have to if a company sell both VAT liable items and exempted items, during the schedule one output. So let me check the schedules. So this is the format of VAT schedule number 1. Here you can see you have to enter the data transaction by transaction, not the bulk. Are there any other cases to fill under input at page G? What is page G? Cage J, if you do have RIP status, that means registered identified purchaser, right? Your SWAT purchase amount, right? You have to enter to the cage number J, right? And the suspended VAT amount, you have to enter to the cage number K. Further, you have to issue a credit voucher for this particular supplier against this is that suspended purchase, right? SWAT suspended purchase වලට අදාළව ඔයා මේ cage J වලට ඒ amount එක සහ suspend කරපු VAT එකේ amount එක cage number L වලට enter කරන්න ඕනි. ඒ වගේම මෙතනට suspended purchase වලට අදාළ schedule එකේ මේ තියෙන numbers ඔක්කොම mention කරන්න ඕනි. The special and important thing while entering the data here, you can enter the data directly to those boxes, and you have to customize the return based on the questions and answers of the qualifying page. You can customize the return. I mean, you can ask certain things to calculate by the system, or you can do those calculation by yourself. That option is available. And other thing is very interesting thing is those info buttons. As you can see here, there are a lot of info buttons, right? In case you do have a doubt what kind of detail I have enter here, what you can do is you can refer those info buttons.
Sir, schedule 1 දාන්න කොහොමද sir? Schedule 1 එක.
Schedule 1 එක ඒ කියන්නේ that output schedule එක. So in order to enter the schedule 1, first you have to download the template. Let me show you the template, right? Here you can access to the template. So you have to go for the download. From the download, you have to select the schedules, and then you have to select the value added tax. Right, this is the schedule 1 output schedule. right? So first you have to download this particular schedule from the web, and it's like this, right? So then you have to enter the serial number, invoice date, right? So based on this format, invoice number, purchaser's team, name of the purchaser, description, say paper. So likewise, you have to enter the details for the schedule one. Then what we have to do is you have to convert this to the CSV, right? Then you have to name the schedule one as per the specification here, right? So you have to enter the team, then that schedule one, and then the period code and the date, and then you have to say whether it is original, and if it is original, you have to say the version number, right? So you have to here see team. First, you have to enter the team here. Period code you have to say. So you have to complete this, and then you have to name it as per the given format, right? And you have to save it as the CSV here, comma, eliminated file, right? And then you have to verify this schedule with the tool, and after the verification passed, then you can upload the schedule one to the system. We'll continue the rest here. See here, there are a lot of supporting document, right? During the return filing, here you have to upload those supporting document. Example, right? So once you complete the return data entering part, then you have to upload the relevant schedules, right? You have to say whether that particular schedule is applicable. If applicable, you have to submit the pre-prepared schedule. So far we have entered the data here, but we cannot submit the return until we upload the relevant schedules, right? And you can do the alteration, right, until you submit the return. That is one important thing. So we will move to the next video. Once the return filling is completed, right? If it is a corporate VAT return or partnership VAT return, it will be moved to the approving officer. Then approving officer has to log into the system using his SSIDs, and he has to submit the return, right? And before submit the return, here as well, as per the income tax type, what you can do is you can have a copy of this return. That means the confirmation page. You can have a copy of this confirmation page, right? And then if everything is okay, what you have to do is you have to make sure everything is okay, and then you can submit it. As one of the participants asked, if it is in case taxpayer need to amend this return after the submission of it, what they have to do, they have to have a printout, they have to download the VAT return from the IRB web, and they have to fill it and hand it over that amended return with the request. here you can make a copy of this confirmation page, right? So you can copy it, or you can have a printout of this confirmation page. And simplified web submission is a little bit different, right? You know, a lot of schedules has to be submitted with the simplified web written submission. So anyhow, now it is no more available because it is extinct from the 1st of October 2025. See, there are several schedules refers to the VAT submission. Here you can see this is a submit button. If everything was okay, what you can do is you can submit it. You can have a printout. So actually that is all about VAT return submission and VAT return filing. So if I summarize the important facts during refers to this VAT return filing, first thing is taxpayer can customize the VAT return. I mean, customize means the system can be authorized to do certain calculations, especially for the uh, input VAT calculation and kind of thing, right? The system will do it, right? Or if not, what you can do is you can ask, you can do this calculation by yourself. It also possible. And data has to be entered to the cages directly, not like IIT and PIT. What you can do is you can directly enter the data to the return, right? And with the return, you have to submit the relevant. Uh, with the return, you have to submit the relevant details as a CSV through the supporting document. We'll do some more exercise on CSV generation and CSV authorization on next week, right? So next week, what we have to do is basically we have to discuss the APIT, but it is not a big area. We can complete the APIT within short period of time. And meantime, we have to discuss the wholesale and retail VAT liability calculation for the next week. Any questions from you? For non-VAT bulk possible, yes, in the return as well as in the schedule, bulk is possible. Next one is how to fill J1 to J4. I think now, Mr. Sudarshana, you are referring this interest. This is refers to the income tax liability calculation, no? Am I correct? Okay. So the thing is actually we need to check whether this is a kind of domestic expenditure, right? If it is domestic expenditure, it will not be allowed, right? You know, the capital allowance for motor vehicles, this one will not allow because capital allowance will be allowed only against the commercial vehicles. If this vehicle is not the commercial vehicle, right, capital allowance will not allow. And for the first one, we have to check whether this is a mm, capital allowance. So, as a revenue officer, I think can we consider the interest on vehicle fee? I think it seems to be a little bit domestic. It's a kind of domestic expenditure, right? So we do not allow the traveling expenses between the place of resident and place of work, no, right? So even for the employment income, we do not allow the that expenditure as a deductible expenditure, right? It's a kind of domestic expenditure. In case this first one identified as a domestic expenditure, it will not be allowed. And the second one, can we claim the capital allowance for this vehicle? I think no, because this is not the commercial vehicle, right? So, but based on the fact, sometimes motor vehicle may allow, but it's 100% the factual one. We have to analyze the facts in details further. Until then, as a revenue officer, I would say no capital allowance on this vehicle. Yeah, the sale of motor vehicle will not be liable for the capital gain tax. Therefore, as per the scenario number 3, there won't be any capital gain tax, right? And but treatment for the new vehicle removing the first purchase vehicle from the computation, right? So computation එකේදී එතන අපි බලන්න ඕනේ මෙයා කොච්චර depreciation අරගෙන තියෙනවද කියලා. එහෙම නැත්නම් ඇත්තටම මේක loss එකට කරපු sale එකක් වෙන්න පුළුවන්. ඔව් invoice number එක ඇත්තටම missing invoice number will not be an issue in schedule 1, right? Because some invoices will have only exempted items. Right, okay. So it's better if you can provide all these details, but in case because of the circumstances, if you are not in the position to provide that much of detail, it is okay. J1 to J4 of the return. J1, I think it is refers to the suspended Okay, seems to be we do not have any more questions for the day. So, all right, sir, another one. Mismatch cases. You mean mismatch between the output schedule and input schedule, no? So, let me uh, answer these questions as well for the next session, right? Because actually I do not have very much practical experience with this but schedules matching. So I will ask those questions from one of the expert in this area, and I will back to I will discuss those areas again during the next week. So schedule matching and the bulk data entering. So those are the major concerns. No? So let me discuss those two areas again on next week. So I will discuss these two matters with one of the IRB expert in this area, and I will be back with the expert opinion. Okay. Yeah, refers to the individual income tax calculation, the interest, it's bit doubt here, right? So the section 18, section 16 refers to the capital allowance. It is not allow the capital allowance. If it is not a capital asset, right? But here the interest, I think my concern is whether this is a domestic expenditure, right? And because the thing is, under the general deduction section, section 11 of the Inland Revenue Act, it says any expenditure incurred for the purpose of production of income will allow. So in this case, the taxpayer wish to claim this motor vehicle maintenance expenditure, right, against the tax liability, this person has to prove that, right? This particular taxpayer has to prove that this the traveling fee or the leasing interest paid to the motor vehicle, right? It is for the purpose of production of income to that particular company. I think it will not be very much easy. No, in IIT, what you have to do is you have to enter the transaction by transaction. Otherwise, there will be issue while allowing the WHT credit. Therefore, you have to enter the interest-related transactions one by one. So now the time is almost 11. So since the time is goes, we'll stop from this point. Right? We do have several questions to answer yet. So we'll discuss those issues with the IRB expert in that area, and we'll come back on next session with the answers for those two questions. So thank you very much again for your active participation throughout the session, and hope to continue the same fashion for the next week as well. Thank you very much for your valuable thoughts during the seminar, during the lecture. We'll meet again on next Saturday with the APID written filing. Thank you.